Thank you for listening. On this episode, we'll be going over the 65-year-old cold case of the boy in the box, a mystery that has remained unsolved. This cold case was originally found in 1957 when a young child was found badly beaten in a box on Susquehanna Road in Philadelphia. I'm joined by Joseph of Chester County Curiosities.
Hey.
He will help us go into detail.
Absolutely. So if you don't know the whole story behind the boy in the box, many people don't.
I didn't until this past week.
Yeah, it's they kind of, when they say swept under the rug, they they were ashamed they couldn't ever figure out who this kid was or who his killer was. Basically, the boy in the box was a 4-year-old boy who was found naked and extensively beaten on the side of Susquehanna Road, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. On February 25th, 1957, he appeared to have been cleaned and freshly groomed with a recent haircut and freshly groomed fingernails. Although he had suffered extensive physical abuse prior to his death, with multiple bruises on his body, he was additionally found to be malnourished. The body was covered with scars, some of which were surgical. They were found on his ankle, groin, and shin. It is believed by both police and public opinion that his cause of death was homicide by blunt force trauma, although there was no evidence. So, yeah.
There was no bruises that...
Well, there was, but there was no... They never found, like, a smoking gun or, they never found who or what,
It's very odd.
Yeah, there was conspiracy theories surrounding what had happened. One of those conspiracy theories involves a foster home that was about 1.5 miles from where the body was found. Remington Bristol was an employee of the medical examiner's office who pursued the case until he died in 1993. He contacted a New Jersey psychic who told him to look for foster homes in the area. When the psychic was brought to Philadelphia, she led Bristol directly to the foster home. Upon attending an estate sale at the foster home, Bristol discovered a bassinet similar to the one sold at JCPenney. He also discovered blankets hanging on the clothesline that were similar to the one in which the boy's body had been wrapped in when they discovered him. But Bristol believed that the boy belonged to the stepdaughter of the man who ran the foster home, and that they disposed of his body so the stepdaughter would not be exposed as an unwed mother. However, the police had established that all the foster children were accounted for, and a re-examination by police investigators confirmed that the family were not likely involved. In 1998, police Lieutenant Tom Augustin, who was in charge of the investigation, and several members of the Vidocs Society, a group of retired policemen and professionals, interviewed the foster father and the stepdaughter, whom he had married. The foster home investigation was closed. So a little weird.
That's fishy.
Yeah.
So what else is fishy is the boy's name was just released today, and his name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that he has a full name means that he has had parents who had to fill out the birth certificate.
Of course.
So now, I assume they're already in the process of doing it. They haven't released it to the public yet. But when you go back and look up his parents, there's a definitive mother and father. Whether they're still together or not, there was a parents that created this human being.
Absolutely.
So this child just goes missing, and he's not reported. So,
No.
if you don't report a child missing, that kind of makes you suspect number one.
Yeah, you're now part of this investigation.
And other than the foster home theory that you projected there, it doesn't make sense, because unless you grow up on like a homestead in the middle of nowheresville, and like you have a child and no one knows about it, people know when you're having a child.
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, the neighbor, the pasture, the teachers, the people who work and sell eggs, the milkman. Somebody would have seen this
yes.
kid and then said, "Hey, what happened to little little Joseph, where'd he go? And
Yeah, like the pediatrician would be like, hey, what happened to little Joey used to bring in, and he's gone. And
yeah,
and by the way, that poster of that beaten boy looks kind of like that little Joey I used to know.
exactly. And the fact that nobody could put this together shocks
So
me.
that's what gives substance to that theory you put out earlier about the foster home, is that if one of the foster children came of age and ended up having a child out of wedlock, then they would back then, because it wasn't like it is today, they would do everything in their power to hide that. So they could have locked this woman in the foster home out of everyone's eyes, she might have been locked, like hid away for 9 months, had the child at the foster home, and they just cleaned the child up and took care of it at the foster home, and no one knew he existed. That's the only way to get away with something like that, because otherwise, where would the child have come from? Where did he go? How come no one notices him missing?
I just feel like back then, especially with adoption so high, they would have put it up for adoption. And even if what you're
Then
saying
you would have
is,
seen the paper trail of who adopted him.
well, no. I'm saying instead of them keeping him and beating him and then killing him, I think as soon as he was born, they would have put him for adoption. Plus, it seems that this family, whoever did birth him, cared about him. He has a middle name. In the 50s, middle names weren't really that popular, as popular as they are today.
I think they might be even more popular back then, actually.
Well, a lot of people don't have middle names from the 50s. And, clearly these people cared. This kid had a haircut. This kid's fingernails were cut. Okay? So he was cared for. Someone at one point loved this kid.
So do you think that maybe someone in this child's life just had like a snap? Like the kid might have been crying, or they just snapped and just beat him, and then just tried to hide the evidence after they accidentally killed him? Or
I don't know. The other thing you could be forgetting is, we don't know what happened. I'm sure the police now do. I had a conspiracy on my own that, this is the 50s. We're still trying to get it. We're still technically only halfway through the 1900s, and, not all medicines are perfect. His parents could have been dead. And this boy was out in the zone in the 50s in Philadelphia, a roaring city. And, there's homeless kids all over the place back then. How do we know this kid isn't roaming about and, a predator found him?
At 4 or 5, I don't think you would last that long by yourself on the streets of Philadelphia.
You grow up quick.
I guess so, but still,
Philadelphia isn't what it is today, also.
That's true. That's just a lot for a child to be able to stay warm and sheltered and fed by himself.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do to survive.
That is true.
So,
What, did you say you had a second theory?
Yeah, so there is a second theory. So this theory is known as Martha, or M theory. Okay. So this theory was brought forward in February 2002 by a woman identified only as Martha. Police consider her story to be plausible, but were troubled by her testimony, as she had a history of mental illness. Martha claimed that her abusive mother had purchased the unknown boy, the boy in the box, from his birth parents in the summer of 1954. The boy was subjected to extreme physical and sexual abuse for 2.5 years. One evening at dinner, the boy vomited up his meal of baked beans and was given a severe beating, with his head slammed against the floor while he was unconscious. He was given a bath, during which he died. The details matched information known only by the police, as the coroner had found that the boy's stomach contained the remains of baked beans and that his fingers were water wrinkled. Martha's mother cut the boy's distinctive long hair, in which the police noted in their initial investigation, in an effort to conceal his identity. Martha's mother forced Martha to assist her in dumping the boy's body in the Fox Chase area, said Martha. As they were preparing to remove the boy's body from the trunk of the car, a passing male motorist pulled alongside to inquire whether they needed help. Martha was ordered to stand in front of the car's license plate to shield it from the view while the mother convinced the would-be Good Samaritan that there was no problem. The man eventually drove off. This story was given confidential testimony given by the male witness in 1957 who said that the body had been placed in a box previously discarded on the scene. In spite of the outward plausible of Martha's confession, police were unable to verify her. Neighbors who had access to Martha's house during the stated time period denied that there had been a young boy living there and dismissed Martha's claims as ridiculous.
So the neighbors said that because they didn't see a young boy that it had to have been lies?
Had to have been.
Even though everything else kind of added up.
Well, I mean, the few things, the main keys there are the biggest ones. She said the kid split up beans, and they said they never released that information of, what was inside of them. And sure enough, there was beans in his stomach, as well as the bath theory. His fingers were water wrinkled from the bath.
So that gives it some plausibility.
Yeah. And sure, the neighbors said that they didn't see what the kid inside the house, but, you never know what happens behind closed doors.
Yeah, I mean, they could have, if they were doing it for nefarious reasons, they could have adopted the kid and just hid him from the public. I mean,
it said right out that they purchased this young boy from the family. I mean, there's their...
When they say, they mean like they purchased them like under the table, or it wasn't like a legit... like foster family.
I mean, I think this family just was like, hey, I like your kid,
like it was like livestock here. Here's $100, give me that child.
Probably wrote up a bill of sale and a handshake, and hey, thanks for the off spread.
Oh my!
But I mean, think about it. I mean, it is pretty plausible, Besides those two theories, there's really nothing else that defends what really could have happened.
So in this media firestorm today, they announced the boy's name is Joseph Augustus Zarelli. 65 plus years ago, he was found dead in the cardboard box. But they're not really giving any other information. They're being tight-lipped about that. So we already presented two possible theories, and I'm sure many more come up in the next following couple days now that people get an interest and start looking into the story more. But there has to be like more to it. You know what I mean? Like,
I know.
They didn't say. I guess back then they didn't have the technology. Like nowadays, when they find a body, they can immediately have it examined, and they can tell you, due to the decomposition, the temperature, there's maggots present, so on and so forth. They can tell how many hours, how many days, or even down to how many minutes or hours it's been laying there deceased. But back then, in the 50s, they didn't really have much of that.
Yeah, they didn't. But, in the 70s, they sure as hell did, which is only, less than 20 years after this case came out. So, there was multiple opportunity for this case to be broken, but something stinks is the problem. Well, something that they're not totally coming out about on this case, I believe.
So you think they're covering up or hiding some detail that could be
I think so.
Gun.
I think so. Yeah. I think maybe, this boy was the son of some high name in Philadelphia at the time. And, was probably came from a very wealthy family. And the boy,
Yeah. The whole thing about, like, it isn't like it is today where many people have out of wedlock children. Back then, if you had an out of wedlock child, you were shunned.
Of course.
It was like a huge deal to have a child out of wedlock back in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
They were ostracized for doing such a thing. So back then, people would go as far as hiding the child in the house or disposing them quietly because they didn't want people to find out about it. Because it meant like social death to have people find out that you had a child out of wedlock. So that gives that some credence.
Yeah. The only other thing I could think of that would be possible is if a single mother who was the mother to this boy, was sick, or maybe she was on her deathbed or ill bed, and the boy got, abducted and beaten and killed. And by the time they started looking for a family, this mother had passed.
True.
She could have been very poor, didn't have any pictures of the kid. Remember, we're talking the 50s. The kid probably only had one pair of clothes. Once again, early 50s. So when they found the mother deceased, they never put one and one together. They never figured out that that's where this boy came from.
So I wonder what's going to happen the next couple days now that they have a name of this child. They're going to go through the family lineage and find out who the parents were in the family, and they're going to question them. I mean, obviously the parents aren't going to be alive today. I mean, they could be. I mean, if the child would have been about 70 years old, I mean, that's the parents are in their late 90s and are still alive. It's probably not possible, but somebody in the family knows what's going on here. Someone's going to.
Well, it's possible that the
excuse me.
It's possible that the parents are still alive, but it's even more possible that a sibling is still alive or an old neighborhood friend.
Yes. Somebody knows.
Somebody knows something. As well as all cold cases, somebody knows something. Someone talked too much back then. Someone had to drink too many and spilled the beans.
So if you know something, comment down below. Also, if you just have questions, comments, or you want to add some other relative information, please be sure to comment and let us know.
Yeah, and please let us know what you guys want us to cover. We'll be doing a range of stuff, a little plethora, you would say, of different topics, but we want to hear what you want to hear.
Exactly. Well, thank you for listening. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more content to come.
Thank you.